Chapter 397. Hearing this, Yen Bugue was silent, but some of the people around him were livid. The Cultivation Alliance naturally applauded. Yen Qing snorted coldly. Relying on his protective Gang Qi, he forcefully knocked away the flying swords that stopped around him, and quickly rushed towards the direction of Yen Bugue and the others. His intention was obvious. As long as he left the valley, he would lose, and the opponent would not chase him anymore. This was the best way to save his life after failing the challenge. Yu Qianqiu sneered. Sure enough, as I expected, everyone wants to live when they are in danger. You want to run away like this? Fortunately, I planned it first. Otherwise, if you admit defeat in public, I will have to stop. Everyone also saw Yen Chang's intention. He did not admit defeat verbally, but he wanted to escape. He wanted to save his life, but he did not want to lose too much face. Next, it was up to Yu Qianqiu to make him stay. To everyone's surprise, the flying swords all over the valley did not carry out a fierce attack. Hundreds of flying swords moved with Yen Qing, waiting for the right moment, and the remaining hundreds of swords wrapped around the protective Gang Qi that was escaping. Looking from a distance, it looked like a cactus or a hedgehog flying. Yu Qianqiu stopped in mid-air, arms crossed in front of his chest, and stared expressionlessly at the spiked ball. Everyone did not know what he was going to do. Yen Cheng, who was hiding in the protective Gang Qi, also felt a little surprised. The opponent did not attack forcefully. Although this was good, it made people feel inexplicably uneasy. His worry was right. Yu Qianqiu would not let him go like this. Just as he felt uneasy and sped up to escape, a scorching heat suddenly came from outside his protective upstanding qi. The protective upstanding qi that was connected to his mind almost collapsed in an instant, but the flying swords outside forced him to resist it with brute force. Everyone was surprised to find that Yen Qing had stopped in the air. Could it be that he suddenly came to his senses and wanted to fight with Yu Qianqiu for the sake of his dignity? Yen Bugue and the rest looked at each other, not knowing what Yen Qing was trying to do. Glancing at Yu Qianqiu, they realized that he was sneering at them with malicious intentions. Suddenly, they felt that something was amiss. Several voice transmissions rang out in Yen Chang's ears, asking him what exactly was going on. However, he was currently in a difficult situation, and was circulating his energy to resist with all his might. The scorching heat seemed to be teasing him. When he was just able to adapt a little, the temperature immediately rose a little. When he was barely able to adapt, the temperature rose again. It seemed that it would not let go until he was forced to use his protective upstanding qi. However, he had no treasures in his hands now. Once he left the protective upstanding qi and faced the 1,000 flying swords outside, he would die. Yen Chang's eyes were red, his skin was bright red, and his 7 orifices were bleeding. Finally, he could no longer bear such torment. He made the same move as the Daluo sect master Luo Qingtian, self-destructing his protective aura shield. Bang! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a loud noise sounded out of thin air. The spiky ball wrapped by the green flying swords was instantly blown into pieces. The airflow surged and a figure quickly sprang out from it. He wanted to take advantage of the impact of the explosion to scatter the flying swords and quickly escape. However, there were only a few hundred flying swords that were blown away by the explosion. The remaining few hundred were already prepared and waiting for him. As soon as Yen Qing sprang out, hundreds of green cold lights immediately broke through the turbulent airflow and shot towards him from all directions like lightning. Yen Qing was able to cultivate to the middle stage of crossing calamity, so he was not completely useless. Without the burden of the protective aura shield, when he saw the group of flying swords attacking him, he also went all out. He immediately struck out his palms in all directions like shadows. Bang, bang, bang. He slapped out a powerful force, knocking away the flying swords that were attacking him. He forcefully resisted the first round of attacks with his profound cultivation base. However, there were too many flying swords. Even the green flying swords that were blown away by his self-detonation of the protective aura shield also swept towards him again. Everyone was silent. Looking at the situation, they knew that this master in the middle stage of crossing calamity was making a futile last-ditch struggle. He forcibly consumed his cultivation base to resist, but he could not move an inch. How long could he resist like this? Although they did not know what method Yu Qianqiu used to force him to self-detonate his protective aura shield, since he had arranged everything step by step, they were afraid that he did not intend to let him go. After all, there were too many flying swords. Finally, there was a streak of cyan cold light that slipped through the net. Yan Cheng, who was already bleeding from his 7 apertures, suddenly felt a chill on his back. His body fiercely trembled, and after a slight ferocious expression, an inexplicable sorrow flashed across his face. He saw with his own eyes that a cyan blade had drilled out of his chest, bringing with it a bright red flower of blood. Yan Qing used all his strength to slap a few times and shouted at Yu Qianqiu in a shrill voice, "Yu Qianqiu, even if I become a ghost, I will not let you go." His mournful voice reverberated endlessly in the valley. It was no wonder that he would say such resentful words. After he died, the deaths of his 3 fellow apprentices were inextricably linked to Yu Qianqiu. How could he not hate? All of a sudden, thousands of flying swords stopped in the air and did not continue to attack. Everyone was surprised. Was this guy going to show mercy? While they were puzzled, they heard Yu Qianqiu say indifferently, "Even if I become a ghost, you will not let me go." What a joke. I hope you can cultivate until the end of the Ghost King after you become a ghost, otherwise you are not even qualified to see me. I have a word of advice for you. After you become a ghost, you should peacefully reincarnate as a human. This conversation puzzled everyone, but Ze and the people of the 4 families understood. If a person became a ghost, his resentment would be too strong. It was possible that he would not enter the underworld and stay in the human world. However, the yang qi in the human world was too strong. It was not something that a little ghost who had just become a ghost cultivator could bear. He was afraid that his soul would disappear soon. Even if he could barely survive, how could the cultivators of the human world let a ghost cultivator stay in the human world? The Taoist protector would definitely kill him. At present, the only place suitable for ghost cultivators to cultivate was the demon ghost realm, which gathered yin qi. However, if they wanted to find trouble with Yu Qianqiu in the demon ghost realm, with Yu Qianqiu's identity in the demon ghost realm, it would be a joke if it was not. As soon as he finished speaking, the green light flashed, and the swords swarmed to snatch it. In exchange, a shrill scream was drowned in the bloodthirsty green light in the blink of an eye. As the blood mist spread in the air, a few pieces of ragged clothes were also chased by the green light and turned into dust. Everyone gasped. Not only was this sword technique powerful and fierce, but it was also abnormally vicious. It actually turned Yan Cheng's bones into dust. Not even a piece of his remains was left. The people of Supporting Immortals Island looked at each other firmly again. The Guiyuan sword technique could actually be so fierce. It was really a top-notch sword technique for killing enemies. As the smell of blood spread, Yu Qianqiu frowned slightly. He opened his arms and thousands of cold lights were summoned. They split into 2 green torrents and returned. In the blink of an eye, all of them were absorbed into his sleeves. Immediately, Yu Qianqiu's figure flashed, and he quickly returned to the front of the 4 families on his sword. As soon as he landed, the green light under his feet also nimbly flicked into his sleeves. The blood mist in the air was blown away by a gust of wind. Ze looked at Yu Qianqiu, who had returned victorious, and clapped her hands excitedly. The applause was abrupt. The atmosphere on the side of the Cultivation Alliance also recovered from the depressing atmosphere. When they remembered that they had won again, they immediately cheered again. However, everyone seemed to have lost the passion from before. The applause and cheers were much more reserved. Everyone looked at Yu Qianqiu with a more complicated expression. From today onwards, no sect would dare to look down on this person. Senior Chang, why didn't you let me shout for Yan Qing just now? At least he could have saved his life. Yan Bugui asked the old man in embroidered robes beside him. Just now, Yan Cheng was in a precarious situation. When he was about to shout for help, he was stopped by the old man. The old man in embroidered robes replied with a faint smile, "Palace Master Yan, you are now representing the cultivation world of each country. How can you say something like admitting defeat? This explanation is too far-fetched. If I can't say it, can't you say it too? Who knows what you are planning?" Yan Bugui frowned and didn't say anything. The old man in embroidered robes seemed to have seen through his thoughts. He said with a smile, "Although Yan Ji of Shushui country's rumor sect can't personally come to the cultivation world of China, he has a junior brother named Yan Huan. His cultivation level is quite high. He has reached the peak of the final stage of tribulation passing. It is said that he has reached the beginning of the soul formation stage. If Yan Ji knew that all 3 of his disciples died here, he would definitely ask his junior brother to come here. Palace Master Yan, do you think it's worth it to exchange the life of a cultivator in the middle stage of tribulation passing for an expert who is close to the soul formation stage?" Yan Bugui pondered for a moment and said with a voice transmission, "An expert who is close to the soul formation stage. Senior Chang, didn't you say that the world's most powerful cultivator forbade any soul formation stage cultivators to come to the cultivation world of China? If we really attract this expert, will it provoke the world's most powerful cultivator to intervene?" No, although Yan Huan's cultivation level is high, he has not reached the soul formation stage. He is not restricted. The old man in embroidered robes' face twitched. Who is the world's most powerful cultivator? Have you seen him before, Senior Chang? Yan Bugui asked with a voice transmission. To be honest, a year ago, Yan Bugui had always thought that soul formation stage cultivators were legendary figures who probably didn't exist in reality. However, in his most critical moment, a group of disciples of soul formation stage cultivators suddenly came to his rescue. This was simply unbelievable. After the incident, both sides reached an agreement to use each other. He also understood the purpose of these people's visit. However, what he was most curious about was what kind of person the legendary world's most powerful cultivator was. How could he make so many soul formation stage cultivators hesitate and really not dare to take a step into China? This was a little unimaginable. He had asked these people more than once, but no one was willing to tell him in detail. It was as if this world's most powerful cultivator was a taboo in everyone's mouth. Hearing this, the old man in embroidered robes went into a trance. That time, he begged his master to take him to the East Sea to see the world. At the time, his master didn't think it was a big deal, so he brought him along. Who knew what happened in the end? It was simply chilling. That person brazenly forced all the soul formation stage cultivators in the world to swear a poison oath. In the end, because he was slightly unhappy, he attacked. After being humiliated, 16 top-level cultivators joined forces to fight to the death, but they all died in the hands of that person. That light green robed figure was like a nightmare. Whenever he closed his eyes, he would remember that person's cultivation level was so terrifying that he couldn't even imagine it in his dreams. Palace Master Yan, that kind of person is not someone we should be concerned about. Let's take care of the matter in front of us. The old man in embroidered robes said with a changing expression. None of them told the Yan father and son that the reason why the soul formation stage cultivators didn't come was because they were forced to swear a poison oath. There were 2 reasons why they didn't say it. The first was because they were afraid that the Yan father and son would be scared. The second was because no one would say that their master had been humiliated. Yan Bugui grunted and slightly nodded his head. Out of the corner of his eyes, he caught a slight trace of fear on the old man's face. In his heart, he made up his mind to find a way to understand this world's most powerful cultivator. Otherwise, when the time comes, he wouldn't know he had suffered a loss. Chapter 398. After a long time, no one from either side accepted the challenge. Yen Bugue looked at the people on his left and right. Seeing their hesitant eyes, he couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Before this, they were all determined to raise 1 billion, ready to embarrass the Huaxia cultivation world and make a fortune. Now, a nascent soul stage Yu Qianqiu had scared them so much that no one dared to go up. Yen Bugue's guess was right. Except for the 2 experts at the final stage of tribulation passing, the other dozens of people were indeed quite afraid of Yu Qianqiu. They wanted to go down and accept the challenge, but they were afraid that the guy with 1,000 flying swords would jump out again. Everyone's cultivation was about the same as Yan Qing and his brothers, so they couldn't be much higher. They really couldn't guarantee that they could win against Yu Qianqiu. No one was willing to risk their lives to try. They could only wait for someone else to come up and then challenge him. On the side of the Cultivation Alliance, seeing that the 3 whip experts had all been killed, and the threat of the strange whip was gone, they were a little tempted. However, they were also worried that these foreign cultivators would use some strange treasures again, so they were a little hesitant. Yu Qianqiu looked around and sneered. They wanted to show off, but they were afraid of paying the price. Every one of them was calculating, and none of them were good. After cursing in his heart, he looked at Zi. Zi was excited and asked, "Do you want me to go up?" Just as Yu Qianqiu was about to nod his head to signal her to make a move, they heard the sound of something flying through the air in the distance. Everyone raised their heads and looked over. A black shadow arrived in the blink of an eye, landing directly in front of the people from the Myriad Demon's palace. A lean and skinny old man in black slowly turned around with his hands behind his back. His snow-white hair flowed freely behind his back as he stared at the mountaintop where Yen Bugue was at with a glint in his eyes. Before he spoke, the aura of a superior made all the people of the 10,000 demons stand with their hands tied, and they lowered their heads slightly without saying a word. Hiss. Bai Shan took a deep breath and said, "Why is he here? Who is this person?" Yu Qianqiu asked, puzzled. To be able to make the 10,000 demons look like this, the person who came must have a high status among the 10,000 demons. It's Yen Wuqian. He's the previous palace master of the 10,000 demons. Why is he here? Before Bai Shan could reply, many people around him answered Yu Qianqiu's question. This person was known as the most ambitious and ruthless person in the Devil Path, the previous palace master of the 10,000 demons, Yen Wuqian. Now that he had come, it was unknown why he had come, but it was most likely related to his son, Yen Bugue. When Yu Qianqiu heard this, he immediately sized him up carefully. Such a famous figure was the #1 gangster in the cultivation world. Worthy of reverence. Yen Wuqian had been famous in the cultivation world for a long time. He had retired many years ago, so most people had never seen him before. Now that he had suddenly appeared, he immediately became the center of attention. Humph. Unfilial son. Yen Wuqian let out a cold snort. His voice was not loud, but it echoed in the valley, showing his cultivation level. Yen Bugue looked over and was already a little dumbfounded. The cultivators from the other countries also frowned. Yu Qianqiu looked at both sides, and his heart was filled with joy. There was going to be a good show to watch. Wuhan. Yen Wuqian called out coldly. Qiu Wuyuan immediately went over and bowed respectfully. Master. What's the situation now? Yen Wuqian asked. Qiu Wuyuan immediately recounted the entire process of the challenge, pointing at Yu Qianqiu as he spoke. Unexpectedly, as soon as he finished speaking, everyone saw Yen Wuqian backhand slap Qiu Wuyuan's face. After being slapped, Qiu Weiyuan lowered his head and didn't say anything. Instead, he became even more respectful. Yan Wuchen turned his head and stared coldly at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu hated people who took advantage of their seniority. He turned his head to the side, too lazy to pay attention to them. He didn't care who they were. That slap shocked everyone. Yan Wuchen really didn't give any face to Qiu Weiyuan. He slapped Qiu Weiyuan in front of so many people. Everyone was stunned when they suddenly realized that Yan Bugui had disappeared. They looked around and found that he was already in the valley. What was he going to do? Late-stage tribulation cultivator, Yan Wuchen is here to accept the challenge. The voice spread loudly in the valley, answering everyone's doubts. The various sects of the Cultivation Alliance looked at each other. They didn't expect that someone like Yan Wuchen, who was rarely seen, would come all the way here just to ruin his own son's reputation. Yan Bugui and the others were livid, especially Yan Bugui, who looked like he had lost his soul. All the cultivators from the various countries stared at the two old men beside Yan Bugui. One was dressed in brocade robes, the other in linen robes. Only their cultivation was qualified to fight against him. But the two of them looked at Yan Bugui with an unreadable expression. Yan Wuchen stood indifferently in the valley with his hands behind his back, quietly waiting for his opponent to challenge him. However, as time passed, no one from his opponent came out. Yu Qianqiu observed the movements of Yan Bugui and the others, and the corner of his mouth curled up. Interesting. If this continued, Yan Bugui's side would automatically admit defeat after 2 hours. Since Palace Lord Yan has put it this way, we naturally can't do anything to make you and your father turn against each other. Sigh. We'll do as Palace Lord Yan says. We shouldn't stay here for long. Let's go. The group of people suddenly left in a hurry. The people of the Cultivation Alliance were all stunned. Then, they all looked at Yan Wuchen who was in the valley. Needless to say, it was because of his father that Yan Bugui could give up 1 billion spirit stones and retreat without a fight. 1 billion spirit stones. He threw it away just like that. What a deep bond between father and son. Yan Wuchen raised his head slightly and looked in the direction of Yan Bugui's departure. He did not move for a long time. The opponent withdrew, and the challenge ended just like that. It was an unexpected win, and no one felt that there was anything to be happy about. Next, what everyone was most concerned about was the ownership and division of the 1 billion spirit stones. That was a large sum of money. The ones who had the opportunity to divide it were naturally the top 10 sects of the Orthodox and Devil sects, and the 4 great clans. As for the other sects who did not contribute money or effort, and instead watched the show for nothing, they naturally did not have a share. The crowd returned to the 100 Flowers Valley. Yu Qianqiu and Ziyi followed closely behind the 10,000 demons. They had their money in their hands, and they were a little worried if they did not follow them closely. Running away with money could happen in any era. In the Cultivation Alliance, the first thing to do was to follow the agreement from the beginning. Everyone would get back how much they had contributed. Yu Qianqiu happily pocketed his 40 million. Then, he stood guard at the edge of the Myriad Demon's palace, waiting for the distribution. He thought to himself, I've won 2 rounds, so I should get the biggest share. Ziyi also followed beside him with a face full of excitement, waiting to get the money. The 2 guys who only cared about money were smiling from ear to ear, and they looked quite lovable when they saw them. We agreed before that 1 billion spirit stones will be divided into 20 parts, and each part will be 50 million. Winning 1 round will get 50 million. Supporting Immortal Island won the first round, so they should get 50 million first. Yu Qianqiu won 2 rounds, so he should get 100 million. Senior Yan of the 10,000 demons came out to scare off the opponent, so he naturally won 1 round, so the 10,000 demons should also get 50 million. As for the remaining 800 million, I suggest that we split it according to the proportion of contribution, Zhu Xianxian of the Daluo sect suggested. Not bad, this is considered fair. I agree. The Blood Demon Palace, the Corpse sect, the Moon sect, and some other sects that paid expressed their agreement. Yu Qianzhou silently calculated in his heart, and the smile on his face froze, and his expression suddenly darkened. This doesn't seem right. Qiu Wuyuan looked around at the crowd and said, if it wasn't for my master this time, who knows how long this challenge would have lasted, and who knows what would have happened. It can be said that my master ended the last 17 rounds by himself, so the 10,000 demons should get 17 portions of the money. However, the 10,000 demons will not do something like eating all the money alone. I am willing to give 2 portions to the sects that paid but did not contribute. If it was before, there would definitely be a bunch of people scolding him or teaching him a lesson. But now, after seeing his strength, everyone had to restrain themselves. Bai Shan smiled and took a step back. It was up to Yu Qianzhou to decide whether he would win or lose. He just had to stand up for him at the crucial moment. Qiu Wuyuan frowned and said, Brother Yu, there's no need to talk about this nonsense. If you have any opinions, why don't you just say it and let everyone hear it? I'm an honest man, I don't have any opinions. I only know that when it came to money, it was agreed that whoever wins more matches will get more money. Those who don't win will not get a share. Yu Qianzhou's expression turned fierce, he pointed his fingers and said loudly, they fought 3 matches and won 3 matches. I don't care what's going on between Senior Yan and Yan Bugui. Anyway, he's able to scare everyone into not daring to accept his challenge. That's his ability. So, I have no opinion even if Senior Yan wins that match. In other words, there are a total of 4 matches, and the billion will be split into 4 portions. The number of matches won will be split accordingly. There's no need to be so noisy. Of course, if I say this, people will definitely say that I'm greedy. Moreover, everyone has contributed. Fine. I'll take a step back and say that the sects that have contributed will also be counted as a share. The billion will be split into 5 portions. The winners will take 4 portions, and the remaining portion will be split among those who contributed. After the group of people from supporting Immortal Island heard this, they all nodded and didn't say anything. They had the title of the world's #1 sect, and it was really inconvenient for them to compete with others. Therefore, they didn't say anything. According to Yu Qianzhou, if they could get 1/5 of the money, that would be 200 million. It was really not a small amount, and there was no reason for them to disagree. Qiu Wuyuan frowned and pondered. The other sects that contributed were obviously unhappy. According to Zhu Xianxian, they could get 800 million, but according to Yu Qianzhou, they could only get 200 million. The difference was too big. Yu Qianzhou, according to what you said, you want to take nearly half of the money. Aren't you looking down on the sects too much? When Zhongping from the Blood Demon Palace said to the crowd with a smile. It seemed like he wanted to use the sects to pressure Yu Qianzhou. You're old and muddled. Yu Qianzhou's words were shocking. He sneered and said, how did you say that I'm looking down on the sects? If I had known, I would have hidden in the back and waited to get a share of the money. Why did I have to go out and risk my life? In the future, if the Cultivation Alliance has such a good thing, I will definitely support it. Who doesn't like to get a share of the money without doing any work? I was depressed before. Why didn't the sects accept the challenge? I, a nascent soul cultivator, had to go out and fight with a tribulation cultivator. After such a long time, it turns out that there's such a shady business. I've learned a lot. It's worth learning. Someone dared to steal his money, and it wasn't a small amount. He didn't care if it was the Blood Demon Palace or the 10,000 demons. However, these words of mockery and ridicule really made the various sects somewhat embarrassed. When Zhongping was especially embarrassed. He couldn't help but fly into a rage and said, "You Qianqiu, how dare you call yourself old man in front of me? Don't you know that there's a difference in etiquette between seniors and elders in this world? Disrespectful old man, trying to divide the wealth of juniors. Who has ever seen a senior like this? It's fine if a senior like this is disrespectful. The eyes of the world are like torches, and they can tell right from wrong. No one will say that I'm disrespectful," Yu Qianqiu said disdainfully. He thought to himself, "Practice your tongue. I'll keep you company." "How dare you!" Wen Zhongping shouted angrily. The people from the Blood Demon Palace all stood up, looking like they were going to fight. The people from the 4 major clans immediately stood behind Yu Qianqiu, opposing the people from the 10,000 demons. Qiu Wuyuan and Quan Deming quickly stepped in between the two groups, trying to persuade them to talk things out. Yu Qianqiu laughed coldly and said, "You want to fight? I've never been afraid of anyone." Back then, the sect leader of Ong Guangceng, Lu Chongqing, was too much of a bully. "I was only at the core formation stage back then, but I still dared to kill him. Now, if anyone else wants to try, why don't you think about it? When the time comes, don't blame me for being ruthless and unreasonable." Everyone smiled bitterly when they heard this. Not only did this guy kill the sect leader of Ong Guangceng, Lu Chongqing, but he also crippled the sect leader of the Luo sect, Luo Qingtian. Calling him a lunatic was not an exaggeration. Wen Zhongping was furious. "Yu Qianqiu, are you threatening the Blood Demon Palace?" Yu Qianqiu glared at him coldly and snorted. "I'm threatening you, not the Blood Demon Palace. But if you want to drag the Blood Demon Palace into this, I won't object. In short, there's nothing more than reason. We've agreed before that the more we win, the more we get. I've won 2 rounds, so I should take 400 million. That's the bare minimum. If anyone dares to give me less than a spirit stone, try it. I don't care if it's the Blood Demon Palace or the Clearwater Palace. No matter how famous you are, you still have to be reasonable. Otherwise, it's no different from robbery." With such a large sum of money, he definitely wouldn't back down. Everyone looked at each other. This guy openly admitted to threatening Wen Zhongping. It seemed like he wouldn't stop until he got his hands on 400 million. Wen Zhongping would probably lose face in front of so many people, and he wouldn't let this go. Wen Zhongping wanted to use the name of the Blood Demon Palace to pressure Yu Qianqiu. Who knew that this guy didn't have any scruples at all? His words went straight to the face, not giving him any leeway to back down. Just as he was flushed with anger, Zhu Xianxian shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, this isn't a place for you to behave atrociously." He and Yu Qianqiu had an old grudge, and he had lost face because of it. Now, there was a conflict of interest, so he couldn't help but jump out. "How am I behaving atrociously?" Yu Qianqiu raised an eyebrow and asked, "Zhu Xianxian, even though what I said wasn't pleasant to hear, every word I said was the truth. Which part of it was nonsense? Are you going to use the name of the Daluo sect to pressure me? Have you ever seen me afraid of the Daluo sect?" As soon as he said this, everyone immediately remembered how Yu Qianqiu killed Luo Xiaohan outside the 100 Flowers Valley and how Zhu Xianxian avoided the battle. Recently, Yu Qianqiu had another fierce battle with the Daluo sect leader, and they really didn't see him afraid of the Daluo sect. These incidents had also caused the Daluo sect to lose face. Zhu Xianxian naturally let his imagination run wild when he heard this. He took a few steps forward, but was stopped by Quan Deming. He couldn't help but fly into a rage out of humiliation and said, "Yu Qianqiu, don't try to be eloquent. Do you dare to fight me to the death?" Everyone was shocked. Wen Zhongping was originally angry, but he was stunned by these words. He looked at Zhu Xianxian speechlessly and thought, even Luo Qingtian isn't his opponent, and you actually want to challenge him. Aren't you overestimating yourself? Let's just talk. Why do you have to find trouble for yourself? He was sober now. Yu Qianqiu was also stunned. He took out a black machete from his storage bag and stabbed it into the ground. He sneered and said, "A gentleman uses his mouth, not his fists. If someone forces me to fight, they should first ask if my 6-foot black blade agrees to it." A murderous chill instantly burst forth from the blade. Everyone quivered. The black fellow's one blade is enough, power was still lingering in the air. Zhu Xinqian's pupils shrank when he saw the blade, and his anger had mostly cooled down. Qiu Weiyuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Everyone, calm down and discuss this properly. Brother Yu, please put away the blade," he said and gave Quan Deming a look. Quan Deming understood and comforted Zhu Xianxian. He pulled him back to his original position, giving Zhu Xianxian a way out. Wen Zhongping was also pulled back by Qiu Weiyuan. Yu Qianqiu also turned around to persuade the people from the 4 major families to leave. He turned around and raised his hand to point at the blade. With a solemn expression, he said in a sonorous voice, "Not for money or reputation, but for reason. The blade is fair, and I will not keep it for now. I will set this as evidence. If there is any injustice, Yu Qianqiu is willing to uphold justice with this blade. Even if the blade is destroyed and I die, I will not hesitate." His words were very righteous and emotional, as if he himself was the embodiment of justice. Everyone present cursed in their hearts. If we want money but don't care about face, then you want money but don't want to lose face. Why are you pretending to be righteous? If it's money, then it's money. Why talk so much about reason? He's clearly telling everyone that if anyone dares to give him less than a piece of spirit stone, he will fight with them. Isn't this bullying? Chapter 400. The people from the 4 major families looked at each other and thought to themselves, no wonder the great ancestor chose him to be her personal disciple. He's really a talent. Bai Shan looked at Bai Zizong meaningfully, but the latter shook his head and smiled bitterly. Many people from the supporting Immortal Island sighed in their hearts. Such a talent was actually expelled from the supporting Immortal Island. If he was still around, he could take over Dongfang Chang'ao's position and represent the supporting Immortal Island in the cultivation world. He would definitely be able to fight for the greatest benefits for the supporting Immortal Island. The supporting Immortal Island lacked shameless people like him. Qiu Weiyuan's face twitched. He still couldn't understand why Yu Qianqiu said he wanted to join the 10,000 demons. He didn't know if it was true or not. Yu Qianqiu's face was solemn. He crossed his arms and stood beside the saber. He seemed to be determined to maintain fairness and justice. In fact, everyone knew what was going on. It wasn't as righteous as he made it out to be. In the end, it was all about money. However, no one blamed him now. This was the truth. There were some things that people wouldn't say even if they knew the truth. Once it was said, everyone would be embarrassed. If they were to fight, the consequences would be unpredictable. After all, those who could sit here were not 3-year-olds. There was a price to pay for being impulsive. But then again, if Yu Qianqiu didn't possess some strength and dared to cause trouble here, then he would have probably been slapped to death a long time ago. Similarly, if that was the case, he wouldn't have come here to court death. One should do things according to one's strength. Overestimating one's strength would only make one suffer. Retribution would always be on oneself. In the midst of the silence, Yan Wuchen, Niu Sen, Ji Nian, Fan Benlei, and Dongfang Chang Ao walked in together. An aura that belonged to experts instantly covered the entire place. These 5 people were prominent figures from both the orthodox and demon sections. Everyone present stood slightly to pay their respects. The pupils of the 5 people shrank slightly. They saw the saber standing in the middle of the place and Yu Qianqiu guarding the side of the saber. What's going on? Yan Wuchen, who was seated at the front, asked in a deep voice as he swept his gaze across the crowd. Chiao Wuyuan immediately went over and explained the whole story respectfully. At the same time, Quan Deming also took the initiative to explain to Ji Nian and Fan Benlei. After understanding what was going on, Yan Wuchen glanced sideways at the few people around him. Then, he stared at the unmoving Yu Qianqiu and walked over slowly. Yu Qianqiu raised an eyebrow and turned around, just in time to meet Yan Wuchen's bright eyes. He also slowly turned around. Yan Wuchen had always exuded the aura of a superior, and at this moment, it was overpowering Yu Qianqiu, as though he wanted him to submit. However, Yu Qianqiu's eyes narrowed slightly. The experience of dominating an area in his previous life appeared in his mind. The pride that he had suppressed for a long time suddenly burst forth from his body. Two invisible auras of a superior were undoubtedly revealed. One aura that looked down on the world, the other aura that dominated an area. Suddenly, they clashed and clashed. Ordinary mortals might not be able to see anything, but the cultivators present were especially sensitive to auras. They immediately picked up on some clues and looked at Yu Qianqiu in shock. They could clearly sense the decisive and murderous aura of a superior from Yu Qianqiu. It was impossible for someone who had not been an overlord for a long time to have such an aura. This was not something that could be faked easily. It might be able to deceive ordinary mortals, but in the eyes of a cultivator, it would be immediately exposed. At this moment, the scoundrel aura on Yu Qianqiu was nowhere to be seen. His entire person instantly changed. He looked at Yan Wuchen coldly and indifferently, without a trace of fear. In terms of aura, he could completely compete with Yan Wuchen. The people from the four great families did not expect Yu Qianqiu to have such a side to him. Purple Dress was slightly surprised, but she quickly calmed down. How could an ordinary person compare to Elder Bai's disciple? Yan Wuchen frowned slightly. His gaze paused on the black broadsword. He turned to look at the crowd and said, "The 10,000 demons agree with Yu Qianqiu's distribution method." After saying that, he continued walking forward. When he brushed past Yu Qianqiu, he stopped and tilted his head to say, "I heard that little brother is a talent of the younger generation. Seeing you today, you really do live up to your reputation." "Senior Yan, you flatter me," Yu Qianqiu replied indifferently. "I heard that little brother has already accepted Palace Lord Bu's invitation. When the time comes, I will find a chance to have a chat with little brother. Senior, I admire your elegance. It is more than I could ask for. If there is a chance, I will definitely pay you a visit." Yu Qianqiu bowed slightly and said. A negotiation between real superiors did not require too much nonsense. The exchange of conditions was reached with a look and a sentence. The meaning was simple. During the competition, Chiao Wuyuan drove you away. I am now sacrificing a lot of benefits to compensate you. Let's forget about what happened in the past. Courtesy demands reciprocity. The other party had made a lot of concessions, and he did not lose anything. Naturally, Yu Qianqiu agreed. Yan Wuchen nodded and walked into the Cultivation Alliance. Ji Nian, Fan Benlei, and the others also walked past Yu Qianqiu. Dongfang Changhao paused for a moment before he turned around and said to everyone, "Supporting Immortals Island agrees with Yu Qianqiu's distribution method." He took a deep look at Yu Qianqiu. The higher-ups of Supporting Immortals Island had long been informed by the sect master not to provoke Yu Qianqiu. Although Feng Xiangtian did not explain clearly, there must be something unusual behind it. After a few people who seemed to be more powerful went in, Chiao Wuyuan and Quan Deming looked at each other, and the latter said in a clear voice, "Does anyone have a different opinion?" All the sects were a little surprised. Why did even Yan Wuchen give in? This is a little strange. At this moment, Yuan Jiukue of the Hexapath Demon sect suddenly said loudly, "The Hexapath Demon sect has no opinion." All the sects were stunned again. Yuan Jiukue was at odds with Yu Qianqiu just a moment ago. Why did his attitude change so quickly? Yu Qianzhou was also a little puzzled. On the other side, Hua Yinhui of the Moon Clan also said, "The Moon Clan has no opinion either." Everyone looked at each other. Qiu Wuyuan looked around and said in a deep voice, "If no one objects, then this matter is decided." He naturally supported his master's decision. After a while, still no one said anything. Qiu Wuyuan didn't say anything more. He took out a storage pouch and handed it to Quan Deming of Supporting Immortal Island. Then, he took out 2 storage pouches and handed them to Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou took it and quickly counted it with his divine sense. After confirming that there were 400 million, he directly stuffed it into the storage bag. Then, he picked up the broadsword on the ground and put it away with satisfaction. It seemed that he was not going to maintain fairness and justice anymore. The remaining 200 million was divided according to the proportion of the capital contribution. Yu Qianzhou stuffed a few million into his storage bag. Patting his storage bag, he slowly walked to Quan Deming's side and glanced at his storage bag. It was as if he was saying, "Now that you have money, it's time for you to pay me what you owe me." Quan Deming shook his head and bitterly smiled. He took out a bag of holding and gave it to Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou looked at it. 50 million was not a small amount, so he put it away. He didn't say much and casually walked out of the Cultivation Alliance. Everyone looked at him with indescribable feelings. They did not expect that supporting Immortals Island and the 10,000 demons would not get the biggest profit. Instead, they were taken advantage of by him. They made a lot of money. Zi followed him out excitedly. The two of them did not say goodbye to the 4 families and left. 100 Flower House. Yu Qianzhou returned to his room and was about to do some private things. Who knew that Zi would follow him? He asked, "Don't you know that it is dangerous for a man and a woman to be alone in a room?" Zi subconsciously looked around. She did not seem to know where the danger was. She asked weakly, "Yu Qianzhou, how much did we earn this time?" "Nearly 460 million. Why do you ask?" Yu Qianzhou asked suspiciously, "Do you want to buy something again?" "No, I was just asking," Zi said excitedly. She looked like a money grubber. Yu Qianzhou could not bear to see a beauty like this. He took her hand and sent her out of the room. He closed the door and said, "Go back to your room. Don't run around. Don't disturb my rest." "Oh." Ziyi's footsteps could be heard as she walked back to her room. Yu Qianzhou locked the door and windows and looked around the room. After confirming that there was no one around, he disappeared from the room. In Utopia's military camp, Guan Yu looked at the 3 storage bags on the table and clicked his tongue. 500 million. In just a few months, he had obtained 500 million. Were spirit stones in the cultivation world so easy to obtain? How is the consumption of the limit-breaking pill? Yu Qianzhou asked as he lay on the chair and placed his legs on the table. Guan Yu's expression turned solemn as he said, "This limit-breaking pill is truly miraculous. Out of the 800 nascent soul cultivators, we've already created more than 300 early-stage tribulation-passing experts. With this 500 million, it's enough to create the remaining 500 nascent soul cultivators into early-stage tribulation-passing experts in a short period of time. There are already 300. Good, good, good." Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. Then, he frowned and said, "Just because their cultivation has reached a certain level doesn't mean that they have the strength of an early-stage tribulation-passing expert. Use the 500 million to raise the cultivation of the remaining 500 people as soon as possible. Then, gather these 800 people together for combat training. Spirit stones are hard to obtain. I need to rely on these 800 people to lay eggs. The spirit stones of the 10,000 people behind us will depend on these 800 people." Guan Yu nodded. When he thought about the scene of 800 well-trained tribulation-passing experts being dragged out together, he could not help but gasp. He had organized combat training for a long time, so he could imagine how terrifying it would be if these people gathered together to fight. If Yu Qianqiu wanted to do something heartless, the consequences would be unimaginable. You have to keep a close eye on my two disciples and Gu Qingyun. When their cultivation reaches the tribulation passing stage, throw them into the combat training field and harshly hone them. It would be best to treat them as hypothetical enemies in the army and torture them to death. Of course, don't really kill them. It doesn't matter if they are beaten half to death. At most, they can come back after they have recovered. Yu Qianqiu said lightly. They are your disciples. You really have the heart to do that. Guan Yu said hesitantly. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said, It's not that I don't have the heart to do that. It's precisely because they are my disciples that I have to be strict with them. It's better to sweat and bleed than to lose their lives when the time comes. Chapter 401. In the Cultivation Alliance of the 100 Flowers Valley, Yan Wuqian and the other experts at the end of the tribulation passing stage had already left. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. Over the past few days, it was rare for him to have such free time. Yu Qianqiu was bored, so he basically hid in his room and studied the jade archives that recorded the rules of the star chart circulation. He wanted to comprehend the remaining 3 star charts as soon as possible. In the vast sea of stars, the star paths were complicated. Perhaps it was because he was anxious for quick results, but it was difficult for him to calm down. He was deep in thought, but he was unable to connect the dots. As for Ze, she had just experienced the prosperity of the world. How could she stay alone for a long period of time? Yu Qianqiu simply let Wu Liqing and the other 3 bring her around so that she wouldn't keep sneaking into his room, which would disturb him even more. For the next few days, the 4 of them made Ze very happy. They had a lot of fun. Actually, Yu Qianqiu could tell that the 4 of them seemed to be interested in Ze, but he couldn't really say anything about it. A daughter of a family was sought after by hundreds of families. Whoever could pursue her depended on their ability. Everyone was on the same side, so there was no need for him to stop them. With his thoughts on his mind, he stopped in front of the window. Suddenly, he saw Bai Shan and the other 3 rushing into the 100 Flowers house. He knew that they were probably looking for him. Sure enough, not long after, there was a series of footsteps and a knock on the door. Yu Qianqiu said, "Come in." After Bai Shan and the other 3 entered, they bowed in unison and greeted, "Mr." Yu Qianqiu turned around and smiled. "Why are you all in such a hurry? Is something the matter?" The 4 of them looked rather solemn. Bai Shan nodded and said, "The people that the Cultivation Alliance sent to the Eastern Sea to keep an eye on Yan Bugui have sent news. This morning, several hundred flying artifacts filled with people landed on the Wuji Island. I'm afraid that the foreign cultivators are already prepared to make their move." "So soon?" "I'm not ready yet." Yu Qianqiu frowned. Bai Shan continued to say, "The Cultivation Alliance has gathered all the people in charge of the various sects to discuss this matter. The 4 of us have already been notified by the elders that the 4 great families will follow Mr.'s lead and follow Mr.'s decision. Mr., please represent the 4 great families in this Cultivation Alliance convention." Yu Qianqiu was slightly startled. He waved his hand and said, No, this responsibility is too great. I can't bear it." He knew what the 4 great clans were thinking. They wanted to tie him to the 4 great clans, and their target was naturally Bai Changchun. "I've said in front of Elder Quan that I'll definitely invite you. If you don't go, I'll be laughed at." After begging and pestering, Yu Qianqiu finally couldn't resist his begging and was kicked out of the 100 Flowers house. On the way, Yu Qianqiu said solemnly, "I'll see what it is first. If it's a thankless task, tell them to find someone else as soon as possible." As long as you go, I'll be able to report. Even if you turn around and come back, it's none of my business. Xiong Hui smiled. Yu Qianqiu looked at him in surprise. He had a look that said, "You're so cruel." He didn't know when this guy became so smart. He used to think he was stupid. Actually, there were only a few hundred lone cultivators who joined the Cultivation Alliance. Their cultivation levels weren't too bad either. At the very least, they were at the core formation stage. Those with low cultivation levels were still worrying about earning spiritual stones for cultivation. They didn't have the time to think about how to integrate into the upper class of the cultivation world. Even if they had the intention, they might not even be willing to look them in the eye. Outside the Cultivation Alliance, Xiong Hui led Yu Qianqiu to more than 600 lone cultivators in different clothes. There were men and women, old and young, and their cultivation levels varied. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the crowd roughly and found that many of them had higher cultivation levels than him. With a puzzled expression, he cupped his hands and said, "I'm Yu Qianqiu. Although I'm also a lone cultivator, I don't know why I'm chosen to be the representative of the lone cultivators." The group of people looked at Yu Qianqiu with awe. This was the guy who had caused a stir in the past. A few days ago, he even killed 2 cultivators in the middle stage of the tribulation passing stage. It was said that he had taken a big bite out of the big sect's hands. It was said that he had 400 to 500 million. When had such a powerful lone cultivator appeared in the cultivation world? Not only did he steal from the big sect's mouths, it was said that he had also publicly threatened the other sections. Even the old devil, Yan Wuchen, had to give him face. As a fellow lone cultivator, who else could we recommend if not you? If it were someone else, we wouldn't be convinced. At this time, a man with a thick beard came out and cupped his hands. "Mr. Yu, we are a part of the Chinese cultivation world. Now that the Chinese cultivation world is facing a foreign invasion, we are willing to do our best. However, although we have this intention, the other sects may not take us seriously. You have a high cultivation level and are famous in the cultivation world. Both the righteous and demonic sects have to give you some face. With you as the representative of the lone cultivators, I believe that the big sects will not look down on us because of you. At least, they won't let us be wronged for nothing. Therefore, we recommend you to be our representative. If it were someone else, I, Hong Ming, would be the first to be unconvinced." "Yes, if it were someone else, we wouldn't be convinced. Please don't refuse, sir, we believe in you." The group of people chattered. "So that's how it is." Yu Qianqiu looked at the crowd thoughtfully. If the sects were the regular army, then these people were the guerrillas. It was hard to refuse such kindness. Could it be that I have to be the guerrilla leader again? Guerrillas were good. If they could win, they would fight. If they couldn't, they would run. Most importantly, they had more freedom. They could also find an excuse not to fight head-on. This representative was worth it. Since you all think so highly of me, I have no reason to refuse. Shall I give it a try? Yu Qianqiu said. "Thank you, sir." The bearded lone cultivator, Hong Ming, was the first to reply. The others also echoed him. It was not orderly at all. They were indeed the characteristics of lone cultivators. Yu Qianqiu frowned. The words unorganized and undisciplined appeared in his mind. However, he did not say anything and nodded to Xiong Hui. Xiong Hui led him into the Cultivation Alliance. As soon as they entered, they saw hundreds of sex representatives surrounding the flat ground, discussing non-stop. The big sect sat in the center circle. Bai Shan was also among them. However, he did not see anyone else from the 4 big clans. Bai Shan was probably the representative of the 4 big clans. Xiong Hui reported to Quan Deming and retreated. Everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianqiu. They had a strange look on their faces. This guy had become the representative of lone cultivators in the blink of an eye. Yu Qianqiu did not care about that. He grabbed a futon and threw it on the ground. He sat on the outermost circle. The small sex representatives on both sides subconsciously moved to the left and right. Although he was the representative of the non-mainstream lone cultivators, he was a person who liked to be in the limelight. Ordinary small sects would not dare to provoke him. The sects continued to discuss. Yu Qianqiu did not say anything and listened quietly. It turned out that the problem of manpower and financial resources had been solved. In terms of financial resources, the Cultivation Alliance would send people to supervise the sect's spiritual stone mines. Half of the output of each spiritual stone mine would be supplied to the Cultivation Alliance. In terms of manpower, the righteous sects would be led by supporting Immortals Island. The demonic sects would be led by 10,000 demons. The allocation of resources between the righteous and demonic sects would be coordinated by supporting Immortals Island and 10,000 demons. It seemed that when the sects faced the threat of life and death, the previous problems were no longer a problem. They were quickly solved. As for what happened after that, Yu Qianqiu listened to it. It was all about the righteous and demonic sects preparing for war. There was also the issue of spiritual stone distribution. No one talked about the lone cultivators. This was a good thing, but since so many lone cultivators had joined the Cultivation Alliance, why didn't the lone cultivators get a share of the activity funds? As the representative of the lone cultivators, if he did not fight for it, who would fight for it? He had just taken office, and he was not given any funds. This was clearly a slap to his face. Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. He slowly stood up and said in a low voice, "I have an opinion." Chapter 402. Everyone turned to look and were slightly stunned when they saw that it was him. They did not know what he had to say, but his expression did not look too good. Qiu Wuyuan rubbed his head, feeling a headache coming on. It was fine if this guy did not speak, but once he did, it was hard to imagine what he would say. His opinions were always hard to bear. Why did he always feel helpless every time he met this guy? He sighed and asked, "Brother Yu, why don't you share your opinions with us?" Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists expressionlessly and said, "I'm not sure if everyone knows, but I'm fortunate enough to be the representative of the itinerant cultivators who are temporarily residing in the Chinese cultivation world." Everyone looked at each other. Bai Shan frowned and thought, "You're not willing to be the representative of the 4 major clans, but the representative of the itinerant cultivators. What's the meaning of this?" Qiu Wuyuan nodded and said, "Of course we know about this. What are you trying to say?" "I want to ask everyone. Every sect has a share in the distribution of the spirit stones. Why aren't there any for the itinerant cultivators? They are also willing to do their bit for the Chinese cultivation world. Why do you have to treat them differently? This seems to be unfair. I hope everyone can consider the itinerant cultivators and allocate a share from the budget." Yu Qianqiu said solemnly. "For money again." Everyone was speechless. Qiu Wuyuan looked around and said, "This money was gathered from the daily mining of the spirit stone mines by the various sections. It is only natural for it to be returned to the hands of the various sects when it is needed. Wandering cultivators did not contribute a single spirit stone, yet they have to take a share. This is indeed a bit unreasonable. Brother Yu, you're making things difficult for us." "That's right. That's right. How can we split the money without contributing anything?" The sects roared in agreement. "Everyone, please listen to me." Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists at everyone. After the discussion died down, he continued, "I, Yu Qianqiu, have always been the most reasonable person. I would never do something so unreasonable. Itinerant cultivators were weak in the cultivation world. It was impossible for them to occupy famous mountains and great lakes to mine spirit stones like the various sects, so where would they get the money to hand it over? They had always lived and died on their own. In order to survive, they often did despicable things, so the other sects did not care about them. To put it bluntly, no sect thought highly of them. Even so, but... Looking around, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed outside. He said emotionally, right outside, those unaffiliated cultivators who you don't like joined the Cultivation Alliance without hesitation when they heard that the cultivators of Huaxia are in trouble. They are willing to sacrifice their lives for the cultivators of Huaxia at any time. Their selflessness can be proved by the sun and the moon. Yu Qianqiu. Qiu Wuyuan couldn't bear to listen any longer, and couldn't help but interrupt. Then, he looked at the reactions of the various sects, only to see that they weren't moved by his words at all. The expressions on their faces were very strange, and it was clear that they were thinking the same thing as him. Brother Yu, just tell me how much money you want. But let me make it clear first, if you ask for too much, we won't give you any more. Qiu Wuyuan was too lazy to beat around the bush with him. If he really went around in circles, who knew where he would end up, and the loss might be even greater. Yu Qianqiu's expression softened a little. It was fine as long as he gave money. For such things, if you did not ask for it, they would not give it to you. You would only have a chance if you asked for it. No matter how much it was better than nothing. Therefore, he nodded in relief. Actually, they never asked me, their representative, to make any requests to the Cultivation Alliance. But I feel that with a stable source of spirit stones, the hearts of the people will be stable, and it will be easier to command. Senior Qiu, there are more than 600 people outside. How about 100 superior grade spirit stones per month for each of them? You're crazy. Qiu Wuyuan was almost roaring. The palace master of 10,000 demons, can't even get 100 superior grade spirit stones per month. You want us to give each of them 100 superior grade spirit stones per month for a group of lone cultivators? Yu Qianqiu, you've gone too far. The criticism from the various sects came one after another, and it was simply the anger of the crowd. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a moment before he reacted. In recent years, he had gotten used to earning a lot of money, and he had almost forgotten that each faction's money was also accumulated over many years. He had never heard of anyone receiving more than 100 high-grade spirit stones in a month, not even 50 high-grade spirit stones. Some sects even distributed low-grade spirit stones and a dozen low-grade spirit stones. Of course, the people with high positions in the various sects could use a lot of spirit stones, but it was completely different from receiving them according to the rules. Damn it. I've broadened my horizons too fast, and I almost forgot the days when I was poor. How shameful. Yu Qianqiu said awkwardly, please calm down, everyone. I was too quick with my words, and I misspoke. I said 1 superior grade spirit stone as 100 superior grade spirit stones, please don't misunderstand. I think you're so rich that 100 superior grade spirit stones are nothing to you, right? The Luo sect's Zhu Xianxian couldn't help but say. When everyone heard this, they looked at Yu Qianqiu in deep thought. This guy was young, but he had a lot of money on him. Just the money he had gotten in this period of time, 100 upper-grade spirit stones was not even a drop in the bucket. Zhu, what do you mean by that? Yu Qianqiu glanced at him coldly, and his tone darkened. He raised his eyebrows and said, I've said something wrong, and I've already apologized. Are you trying to pick a fight with me? If so, just say it, I'll play with you anytime. Zhu Xianxian was also a dignified Deluo sect's representative. After being provoked in front of everyone, how could he bear it? Even if he could bear it, he couldn't. If he didn't put on an act, he would be humiliated by Yu Qianqiu again and again. How could he face others in the future? He immediately jumped up from the cattail hassock, and Quan Deming, who was beside him, immediately pulled him back. This was something that everyone had expected. "Yu Qianqiu, don't be so arrogant. You'll get what you deserve sooner or later." Zhu Xianxian roared, still unwilling to give up. The various sects representatives shook their heads. What happened in the past was already in the past, and a little humiliation should be tolerated. Since you can't win against him, why can't you control your mouth? Aren't you just looking for trouble? Yu Qianqiu sneered, "Don't worry, if I really get what I deserve, I'll definitely kill you first." Hearing this, the group of people sitting cross-legged looked at each other speechlessly. They sighed inwardly. The current Yu Qianqiu was no longer the Yu Qianqiu of the past. Not to mention Zhu Xianxian, as long as he had a saber in his hand, how many people would dare to challenge him? They didn't manage to kill this brat back then, but now that this brat had made a name for himself and his momentum was growing, it wouldn't be easy to deal with him again. "All right. Don't talk so much. Can't you see the situation now? We're here to discuss a solution, not to quarrel." Qiu Weiyuan shouted. The way he looked at Zhu Xianxian was clearly telling him that he asked for it. The way he looked at Yu Qianqiu was complicated. If the 10,000 demons really recruited this brat, they didn't know if it would be a blessing or a disaster. No matter where he went, he would get into trouble. Those loose cultivators were really ruthless. They actually pushed this brat out to be their representative. Who knew what trouble he would cause in the future? Quan Deming helplessly pushed Zhu Xianxian back to the cattail hassock, then looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Yu Qianqiu, it's impossible to get one top-grade spirit stone. Only the disciples who are always ready for battle can get one top-grade spirit stone every month. The loose cultivators that you represent have not been assigned any missions yet. How can they enjoy the same treatment as the disciples who are always in danger? You keep saying that it's fair, but do you think it's fair? That didn't seem right." Yu Qianqiu scratched his nose and said, "Elder Quan, there are at least tens of thousands of disciples from all the sects who are ready for battle, and I only have about 600 people here. One spirit stone per person, that's only about 600 in a month. Compared to the huge financial resources of the entire Cultivation Alliance, this is a small amount. Do you think you can make an exception?" He still wanted to fight for it. No matter how big their financial resources are, they're still prepared. Once the war starts, the consumption of elixirs and instruments will be huge, and they need to spend a lot of money to purchase them. Also, a large amount of money is used as a reward, and it's not something that can be given to anyone, Quan Deming explained. If it was someone else, they would have been thrown out long ago. Who would have bothered to bargain with him and explain so much? Then how much can you give? Yu Qianqiu frowned. Quan Deming and Qiu Weiyuan exchanged a look, and Qiu Weiyuan looked at the crowd and shook his head. Since these 600 individual cultivators are also members of the Cultivation Alliance, I suggest we reduce the spiritual stones given by half, and give them 50 mid-grade spiritual stones. What do you guys think? After a month, it's only about 300 top-grade spiritual stones. I think it's acceptable. Quan Deming nodded. I think it's acceptable too, Bai Shan, who represented the 4 major families, said. Hua Yinui from the Moon Clan also said it was acceptable, followed by Yuan Jiukui from the 6 Paths Demon Clan. Everyone couldn't help but look at Yuan Jiukui. The first 2 families were still understandable, but since when did the 6 Paths Demon Clan stand on Yu Qianqiu's side? Yu Qianqiu was also a little puzzled. What did this old guy mean by showing his goodwill so many times? The other sects wouldn't start a feud with Yu Qianqiu over a mere 300 spiritual stones in front of him. The matter was passed almost smoothly. Although the money was a little less, Yu Qianqiu had his own plan, so he didn't argue too much. Just as he was about to sit down, he heard Qiu Weiyuan say, Yu Qianqiu, since those individual cultivators have enjoyed the benefits of the Cultivation Alliance, they have to be restrained by the Cultivation Alliance. They are not like the disciples of other sects, and they are used to being alone. If the situation is critical and they are needed, can you restrain them? Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu straightened his back and said with a cold tone, I have never forced them. But since they push me to be the leader, it's too late for them to not be restrained by me from the moment I stepped into this place. If one doesn't listen, I'll kill one. If two don't listen, I'll kill a pair. If worse comes to worst, I'll kill them all. Hearing this, everyone's heart trembled. This madman might really do something like that. At first, they thought that those individual cultivators were cunning and pushed him to be the leader. Now that they thought about it, many of them were going to be in trouble. Just as everyone was thinking, Yu Qianqiu suddenly changed the topic. He looked around and said proudly, it won't be long before you see these 600 individual cultivators will be like an invincible army. Wherever I point, they will fight. There is no question of not being restrained by me. You will see. Chapter 403. Hearing this, everyone was stunned for a moment before they smiled. It was a fool's dream to command a group of rogue cultivators as an army in the secular world in a short period of time. Not to mention rogue cultivators, even among the disciples of the various sects, how many of them had the spirit to sacrifice themselves and put their lives in the hands of others? This matter was passed off as a joke, and no one cared about it. They continued to discuss the issue of coordination and command between the various sections. Yu Qianqiu sat at the back and listened to him obediently. The various sects seemed to be trying their best to avoid the issue of rogue cultivators. From the beginning to the end, no one proposed to assign tasks to the rogue cultivators. In reality, no one wanted to provoke him, lest this guy ask for money again if they were to get involved. Although it had nothing to do with him, Yu Qianqiu listened very seriously. After the discussion, he was the first to walk out of the Cultivation Alliance. Outside the door, a group of rogue cultivators had not left. They were chatting idly while waiting for him. As soon as they saw him come out, they immediately quietened down and looked at him, hoping to hear some good news. Almost everyone present was the best among the rogue cultivators, but rogue cultivators were rogue cultivators. In the cultivation world, they were like the poorest people in the secular world. They yearned to integrate into the upper class of society, but it was extremely difficult. Therefore, they hoped to use this opportunity to gain the recognition of the various sections. Yu Qianqiu paced back and forth on the steps outside the door. After thinking for a while, he stopped and looked at the crowd with a faint smile. Just now, some of you questioned me as the representative of the rogue cultivators. You're afraid that I won't be able to restrain you at the critical moment. Although I've already patted my chest and promised, I still want to know the truth from everyone. Are you really willing to follow my orders? If not, it's not too late to regret it now, lest something unpleasant happens in the future. Yes. Many people shouted without hesitation. There were also many people who looked at each other and hesitated for a while before reluctantly shouting the word yes. It seemed that there were many people who wanted to make use of Yu Qianqiu, but there were probably not many who were willing to listen to him. Coincidentally, there were people from various sects coming out from the door. When they saw this scene, they all shook their heads and left with a smile. The meaning was clear. A rogue cultivator was a rogue cultivator. Yu Qianqiu took in the expressions of the rogue cultivators. His eyes narrowed and a hint of sharpness flashed across them. He smiled and said, "It's good that everyone is willing. There's something I want to tell you." Originally, the Cultivation Alliance's budget of spirit stones was only given to the sects that had contributed money. None of you had contributed money, so you didn't get a share. However, under my efforts, the Alliance agreed to let us enjoy half of the disciples of each sect who were preparing for the war. Each of you can receive 50 mid-grade spirit stones per month. Although the money is small, it has nothing to do with us for the time being. If there is a need for us in the future, I will definitely fight for it for everyone. I will not let anyone suffer a loss. Everyone's expression was a bit gloomy. The Cultivation Alliance obviously did not treat them the same as the disciples of the other sections. Amidst the silence, a woman's voice suddenly grumbled softly, "I thought what would happen if I pushed him to be the representative. I didn't expect it to still be like this. Then why should we be controlled by him?" Then a man reprimanded in a low voice, "Shut up. If you have something to say, go back and talk." Everyone looked towards the two who spoke. Yu Qianqiu heard the voice and looked over. In the crowd, there was a man and a woman who seemed to be a couple. Both of them had a cultivation level of the late core formation stage. The woman's clothes were revealing more than half of her full breasts. She had quite an enchanting charm. The man's face was fierce-looking and fierce. The two of them were avoiding Yu Qianqiu's gaze with flickering eyes. What a full and charming stunner. Yu Qianqiu clicked his tongue. His gaze was unscrupulously lingering on the woman's breasts. Then, he walked down the stairs towards the two. The people in front of him made way for him. When he arrived in front of the two, he looked at the woman and asked with a smile, "I wonder if this beauty is already taken?" His gaze was still constantly taking advantage of her. When everyone heard this, they were stunned. They didn't expect that this Yu Qianqiu was also a lecher. At first, the two of them panicked. They thought that Yu Qianqiu wanted to do something. They didn't expect him to say something like this. After the woman recovered from her shock, an amorous expression appeared on her face. Her bright eyes were watery as she looked at him. The man's face was filled with shame and anger. He looked at Yu Qianqiu in front of him as if he was trying his best to suppress his anger. He gritted his teeth and said, "Mister, please behave yourself. We are dual cultivation partners." "Oh. So that's how it is." Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. He looked at the man and smiled, "I said before that if you don't want to listen to my orders, it's not too late to regret it. Otherwise, something unpleasant will happen in the future." However, someone just said that he was willing, but in the blink of an eye, he changed his mind. "He's clearly playing with me. What do you think we should do with people who go back on their words?" The woman already felt that something was wrong. She subconsciously retreated. The man quickly cupped his hands and said, "Mister, please forgive me." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and interrupted him. He pointed at the woman and said, "Kill her, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise, we'll die together." The loose cultivators looked at each other speechlessly. This guy was going to kill someone if he was unhappy. Everyone slowly retreated, afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. The man's expression changed. He and the woman both retreated. Suddenly, a cold light flashed from the storage pouch on their waists. The two immediately jumped onto their flying swords and tried to escape. Yu Qianqiu stood expressionlessly. In an instant, dozens of green lights shot out from his sleeves. With a hissing sound, they tore through the air and chased after the two of them. "Ah!" Two screams were heard. The green lights flashed in the air and two clouds of blood mist appeared. With Yu Qianqiu's current cultivation, he didn't even care about the middle stage of the tribulation passing stage. How could two cultivators in the late stage of the core formation stage be a match for him? He killed them easily. Along with the shrill screams, many people immediately dashed out from the Cultivation Alliance. Qiu Weiyuan, Quan Deming, and the others came out just in time to see the end. Dozens of green lights returned from the sky and slipped into Yu Qianqiu's sleeves. "What happened?" Quan Deming asked one of the disciples guarding the door. The disciple immediately told him what happened. Qiu Weiyuan, Quan Deming, and the others looked at each other. This guy really didn't hold back. Previously, he told them to kill one person if they didn't listen. If they didn't listen, he would kill both of them. The group of loose cultivators grieved. Many of them secretly regretted recommending Yu Qianqiu to be their leader. They didn't know what would happen to them in the future. It was too late to back out now. However, in the following period of time, Yu Qianqiu's actions greatly surprised everyone. He spent a sum of money to prepare a one-piece black suit for every loose cultivator. He even specially embroidered the word "loose cultivator" on the chest. Usually, he led everyone to tour around the 100 Flowers Valley every day. He called it unified training, but in fact, everyone just had to follow him to play. Every day, he left early and returned late. When he returned to the 100 Flowers Valley, he paid out of his own pocket and treated everyone to good wine and food for free. The group of people was confused and didn't know what he was doing. In the end, they were too lazy to think about it and simply followed him. After all, they didn't have to pay out of their own pocket. Therefore, a group of masked people could be seen in the 100 Flowers Valley every day. They had already surrounded them. The only one who didn't wear a mask was a red-faced, long-bearded man in green. The man with an extraordinary bearing sat on an unusually strong horse. He stroked his beard and said in a deep voice, "You have all been surrounded by me. Give up the meaningless resistance and I will spare your lives. Where is this? How could this be? Who are you?" The group of loose cultivators looked around in confusion. They didn't see Yu Qianqiu. In a panic, they quickly took out their Dharma artifacts and prepared to defend themselves. Guan Yu's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. He raised his hand and waved. Without saying a word, the masked people around him each took out a handful of astral breaker talismans and threw them out. Bam, bam, bam. There was a loud explosion. The strong airwave shook the group of loose cultivators. Screams could be heard everywhere. Then, like wolves entering a flock of sheep, the masked people around them started a crazy massacre. Chapter 404. Yu Qianqiu. Why? Someone screamed before he died. The rogue cultivators who had fallen into chaos were awakened by this scream. Everyone suddenly realized that they had been eating and drinking for free all this time just to numb themselves. No wonder they couldn't figure out the reason. They didn't expect the price to be so high that they had to pay with their lives. All kinds of curses were directed at Yu Qianqiu. The number of people on both sides was similar, but it was a completely oppressive massacre. A rogue cultivator released a flying sword to counterattack, but it was immediately shot down by the opponent's flying sword. Before he could react, he felt a chill in his back, and a flying sword pierced through his chest. Another rogue cultivator wanted to escape on his sword. As soon as he rose up, he felt a chill in his waist. His upper body tilted and was separated from his lower body, and his intestines flowed out. The surrounding masked men were all at the crossing calamity stage. They cooperated seamlessly with each other, attacking and defending at the same time. They attacked mercilessly. The group of rogue cultivators didn't even have a chance to escape. In an instant, they collapsed. Cries of grief and indignation suddenly sounded, and then suddenly disappeared. If it weren't for the corpses everywhere in the valley and the strong smell of blood, no one would believe that the surprise attack ended in such a short time. As soon as the battle was over, the masked man quickly cleaned up the battlefield. The storage pouches and various magic tools were quickly picked up. The corpses were also quickly piled up. From the beginning to the end, no one made a single sound. Everything was carried out in silence. Yu Qianqiu suddenly appeared beside Guan Yu. Looking at the team members in the valley cleaning up the battlefield in an orderly manner, he nodded slightly and said, "My efforts were not in vain. There were more than 600 people. Why did you kill them all? You could have used them for your own purposes." Guan Yu got off the horse and asked. Red Rabbit seemed unwilling to witness such a bloody scene, so it turned around and galloped away. There are many reasons. I don't need to explain them one by one. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently, I wanted to use these 600 people to test the effect of your training. This is one of the reasons. Guan Yu frowned, and his gaze moved from him to the team members in the valley. After the masked team members gathered the corpses, a few of them took out fire talismans and threw them out, preparing to destroy the corpses. With a buzz sound, a raging fire ignited, and the bloody corpse was engulfed in flames. Thick black smoke began to rise, and a burnt smell filled the air. Yu Qianqiu's nostrils flared, and with a wave of his hand, a green fireball landed on the corpse. The green flames exploded, and quickly engulfed the red flames. The rapid rise in temperature forced the masked men in the surroundings to retreat. Not long after, the fire was extinguished, and the corpses were all turned into ashes. The team members quickly formed into two teams. The two leaders of the team rushed over and handed 2 storage bags to Guan Yu. Inside the bags were the spoils of war they had just collected. Guan Yu took the storage bag and looked at Yu Qianqiu. Seeing him nod, Guan Yu immediately turned around and shouted, "Change." The 2 leaders flashed back, and all the team members immediately moved. They took off their masked clothes and stuffed them into the storage bag. Then, they took out another set of masked clothes from the storage bag and put them on. After they were done, the words "Rogue Cultivator" were written on their chests. There were also 600 people, and they were exactly the same as the 600 people who had just been massacred. However, their aura was completely different. They lined up neatly and stood solemnly. Yu Qianqiu stepped forward, looked down, and waved his arm. Special Battle Team 1st Battalion, Special Battle Team 2nd Battalion, remember, your profession is a soldier. A soldier's profession is to never stop fighting. I have painstakingly trained you all for this moment. Today, you will officially follow me into battle. Perhaps this road will be filled with thorns, danger, and death, but I believe that you are the one and only soldiers in the cultivation world. You can overcome all difficulties and obstacles, and the outside world will become more wonderful because of you. We pledge our lives to follow the leader. Long live the leader! Long live the leader! All the team members shouted at the top of their lungs, and their voices echoed in the valley for a long time. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed in the direction of Utopia's military camp. He said loudly, "There are close to 10,000 soldiers in Utopia. You are the first batch of members to officially follow me into battle. You are also the first batch of soldiers who have used the limit-breaking pill and spent a large amount of spirit stones to create. You bear the heavy responsibility of helping the latecomers to break through to the tribulation stage. Are you ready? Invincible! Invincible!" All the team members were impassioned. I don't think that every cultivator can live forever, but... Yu Qianqiu suddenly waved his arms and shouted, "I can guarantee you that your bloody battle today will give your future generations a land without oppression and exploitation in Utopia. Those with outstanding battle achievements. A monument will be erected in Utopia and passed down to future generations. Long live the leader! Long live the leader!" All the team members shouted again. After mobilizing everyone before the battle, Yu Qianqiu looked at everyone affectionately. Then, he waved his hand and shouted, "Let's go!" More than 600 team members disappeared, leaving Guan Yu alone to look at the empty valley. After a long time, Guan Yu whistled, and Red Rabbit galloped over. He mounted the majestic horse and looked in the direction of Ethereal Palace for a long time. Then, he galloped straight for the military camp. In a hidden valley outside the 100 Flowers Valley, Yu Qianqiu and a group of team members quietly appeared. All the team members observed their surroundings warily. With a wave of Yu Qianqiu's hand, hundreds of well-trained team members immediately spread out and conducted a carpet search. After confirming that they were not being watched, they returned and gave him an "okay" gesture. Yu Qianqiu nodded in relief. He took out 2 jade archives and handed them to the 2 battalion commanders of the special forces. He said, "This is a detailed map of the area outside the 100 Flowers Valley. The 2 battalions are to be divided into 60 squads. Look for favorable terrain to hide outside the 100 Flowers Valley. Try your best to form an encirclement. Take note. You must ensure that the communication between squads will not be cut off. If anything happens, you can respond to each other. Also, there are some things to take note of regarding your current identities in the Jade Archives. Read them carefully." "Understood." The 2 battalion commanders replied. Yu Qianqiu continued, "If you're discovered while you're hiding, you can tell them my name. Tell them that you're my men. If anyone still insists on provoking me after knowing my name, kill them on the spot." "All right, carry out the order." "Yes." The 2 team members saluted, then quickly returned to their squads with the Jade Archives in hand. These 2 Jade Archives were personally drawn by Yu Qianqiu while he was touring around the 100 Flowers Valley with a group of rogue cultivators. He had prepared them specifically for today. Once the plan was issued, the 600 team members split up into squads and spread out in all directions, hiding among the lofty mountains and lofty ridges. The long sword on Yu Qianqiu's back popped out. Stepping on it, he leisurely flew into the 100 Flowers Valley. He shook his head and hummed a Peking opera tune. "I was admiring the mountain scenery from the city tower when I heard the commotion outside the city. Banners fluttered in the air, but it turned out to be the troops sent by Yu Qianqiu." Under the twilight, he entered the 100 Flowers Valley. Many people found it strange when they saw him. Where had all the masked rogue cultivators gone? Every time, more than 600 people would return. It was truly a majestic sight. Why was there only one person left now? Ignoring the gazes of the crowd, Yu Qianqiu returned to the 100 Flowers residence. He went upstairs and pushed open Ziyi's room. He realized that she hadn't returned yet. It had been 4 to 5 days since she last returned. He couldn't help but frown. He hoped that nothing bad had happened. Otherwise, Nongzhu would fight him to the death. Thinking about it, he felt relieved. With the heirs of the 4 major clans accompanying her, even if something happened, the 4 major clans would have their own ways of finding out immediately. For chasing one. He wondered if there would be a son-in-law that Nongzhu fancied among them. Ugh! If Old Man Bai's descendants chased after Nongzhu's daughter, what would happen to their seniority? Would Nongzhu have to follow the 4 major clans and address Old Man Bai as her ancestor? Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but laugh at the thought of what might happen. He shook his head and went downstairs again. He ordered free food and drinks. Leaning against the window, he looked at the rising lights in the market and drank alone. Now that he had calmed down, he seemed to realize that something was missing. After thinking about it carefully, he realized that the stubborn girl was missing by his side. Bang! There was an explosion in the distant sky. Yu Qianqiu, who was a little absent-minded, suddenly became alert. He looked back and was slightly stunned. A splendid firework bloomed in the night sky with enchanting colors. Then, a few more slowly rose and exploded in the sky one by one. Someone actually set off secular fireworks in the 100 Flowers Valley. What a refined mood. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and smiled. He raised his glass and drank a little, enjoying the fireworks with the wine. The crescent moon that appeared behind the fireworks was particularly lonely. There was a river below the fireworks. The heirs of the 4 major clans kept taking out fireworks from their storage bags and placed them on the riverbank. Ziyi held a burning incense that flickered in her hand. She lit up a bunch of colorful flames and couldn't hide the excitement on her face. The brilliance of the sky and the brilliance of the reflection on the river echoed from afar. It was indeed a romantic scene under the night sky. These fireworks were bought by the 4 of them when they went to the secular world for fun. They were the kind of one-eyed salutes that could climb very high after being set off. They didn't know how many they bought, but the four of them kept placing them on the ground for Ze to light. Many people in the 100 Flowers Valley were attracted by the fireworks. Gradually, many people gathered to watch from afar. Now that the war in the cultivation world had just begun, the atmosphere was tense. The sudden sight of this made people feel much more relaxed. "Miss Ce, try this one." Bai Zizong held a firework that was as thick as a thigh and placed it on the ground. Ze took a new incense stick that Wu Liqing had lit up. She excitedly walked over and lit the fuse at the base. Bang! Even the ground slightly trembled. A bowl-sized ball of light rushed out and shot straight into the sky. Bang! It exploded, and the gorgeous colors spread across the sky. The expressions of the people below were also clearly illuminated. So it's these guys. After Yu Qianqiu ate and drank to his heart's content, he saw that the fireworks were still going off. He put his hands behind his back and came to see who had nothing better to do after eating. He didn't expect to see the four young masters sucking up to Ze. "So beautiful," a woman murmured from the side. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and looked. Coincidentally, a firework exploded and light shot everywhere. The woman's face was right in front of his. When they saw each other clearly, they were both stunned. Chapter 405. Yan Zixia. Yu Qianqiu. Both of them were stunned. They didn't expect to meet under such circumstances. Then, they looked at each other and smiled. An indescribable feeling lingered between the two of them. Yu Qianqiu smiled awkwardly. Back then, on supporting Xian Island, he was lonely, so he picked her up. His hands touched her all over, touching all the places that she shouldn't touch. It felt good. Then, both of them left supporting Xian Island. When they met again, he purposely avoided her. So, although both of them were in the 100 Flowers Valley, they didn't see each other. Yan Zixia's faint smile was mixed with some bitterness. She could naturally feel that Yu Qianqiu was purposely avoiding her. Now that they met again, she wanted to ask why, but she didn't know how to ask. Bang! The fireworks exploded, releasing a gorgeous light. Both of them saw each other's faces clearly again. Not talking wasn't a solution. Yu Qianqiu touched his face and smiled awkwardly. "Why are you here?" "I saw someone set off fireworks, so I came to take a look." "What about you?" Yan Zixia asked. "I also came to take a look." Yu Qianqiu smiled. Their conversation was simple and empty. Then, both of them fell into silence. They looked awkwardly at the place where the fireworks were set off. After a long time, Yan Zixia suddenly asked, "Is the woman who set off the fireworks the lady in purple dress who was with you? Do you know her?" Yu Qianqiu asked. "I don't." Yan Zixia shook her head lightly. Who doesn't know Yu Qianqiu's name in the cultivation world? Who doesn't know that Yu Qianqiu has a lady in purple dress with unfathomable cultivation? You two are Tao companions. We're dual cultivation Tao companions. Yu Qianqiu was stunned, and he hurriedly waved his hand and said, "No, no." He thought in his heart. That little girl probably doesn't even know what it means to go to bed now, dual cultivation my ass. He pointed at Ze and the four young masters and said, "Can't you see anything?" When Yan Zixia heard this, she took a closer look and smiled. She could also tell that the four successors of the four great clans were pursuing Ze. If Ze was really Yu Qianqiu's Tao companion, how could he just stand there and do nothing? Turning her head, she smiled sweetly and said, "That lady in purple is also a stunning beauty. She has been by your side for a long time. Could it be that you have never been moved?" Why did you allow others to pursue her? Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and shook his head. He thought to himself, that girl's father is not easy to deal with. It's better not to touch him. Besides, I already have a few good women. I'm already satisfied. Yan Zixia looked at him in a daze. The little disciple of supporting Immortals Island back then had already risen to fame. Could he continue his fate? Recalling the past, he couldn't help but ask, "You owe me something. Do you still remember?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. What do I owe you? It seems like you have forgotten. Yan Zixia looked at the sky and waited for a firework to explode. She smiled bitterly and said, "You promised to compose a song for me. If you really forgot, then forget it." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Thinking about it carefully, he did casually promise her back then. He almost forgot about it. He didn't expect her to remember it. Dong, 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 dong. While the two of them were speechless, suddenly, a melodious sound of a zither could be heard. Even the bang-bang of the fireworks couldn't cover its penetrative power. It clearly spread across the wilderness. It was obvious that the person who played the zither injected true essence into it. The two of them couldn't help but look at each other. They were just talking about a song and someone was playing the zither. Wasn't it too much of a coincidence? The people who were watching the fireworks looked towards the source of the sound. On the other side of the river, under the cold moon and the brilliant fireworks, there was a beautiful woman in a red dress sitting on a giant rock that had been standing for God knows how many years. Her face was covered by a red veil, and there was a zither on her crossed legs. Her fingers were as delicate as jade, and the melodious sound of the zither could be heard. Although they couldn't see her face, judging from her demeanor, she must be an enchanting beauty. The people whispered to each other, not knowing where this mysterious woman came from. The few people who were setting off the fireworks stopped. The night sky returned to normal, and only the sound of the zither could be heard. Zi looked at Bai Zizong and the other three people with a questioning gaze. The latter shook their heads, indicating that they didn't know who it was. I am a fox that has been cultivating for 1,000 years. 1,000 years of cultivation, 1,000 years of loneliness. In the dead of night, can anyone hear me crying? In the dim light, can anyone see me dancing? The woman plucked the strings of the zither and hummed a rhythm. Her voice was faint and moving, and it echoed across the wilderness. Isn't this the song you composed? Yan Zixia turned her head and asked. Ha! Oh! I think it is, Yu Qianqiu stuttered. His facial expression kept twitching. It was so interesting. The others couldn't tell who the woman was, but he could. Even if he couldn't see her, he could tell from the voice. Who else could it be other than his master's wife, the enchantress of 100 charms? He just didn't know why she came here to play the zither in the middle of the night. Zi was suspicious when she saw the woman, but when she heard the song, she couldn't hide the surprise on her face. Although she didn't know much about the world, Nongzhu was a master of music. Having been influenced for so many years, she could naturally tell the good from the bad. It was the first time for her to hear such a melodious and popular song. After singing a few lines, a sad story appeared in front of her. Isn't this song from Onquang White Fox? Bai Zizong looked at the woman under the moonlight and frowned. Zi asked, You mean the song is called White Fox? I don't know, but many people say so. Bai Zizong smiled. Zi nodded and said, It's a very appropriate song name. Miss Zi, you probably don't know yet. It said that this song was composed by Mr. Yu. Tan Fei smiled and said. You mean Yu Qianqiu? He can compose music. How is that possible? Zi was shocked. Then she shook her head and denied the rumor. Ever since she had known Yu Qianqiu, she had never seen that he had any talent in this area. It should be said that the man's words and actions were not even close to his ability to compose music. If he had half the demeanor of his master, she might have believed it. In short, it was impossible. In fact, this rumor had been around for a long time. But no one could imagine that Yu Qianqiu, who was known as a scum and a madman, could compose music and play the zither. Wu Liqing thought about it and couldn't help but laugh. He shook his head and said, "It's just a rumor after all. Rumors may not be true. I also don't think Mr. Yu would do it. There's also a song called Dream of Mandarin Ducks and Butterflies. It's also a rare classic. It said that it was composed by Mr. Yu. If it was really composed by Mr. Yu, then, hee." Before Jingzhuo finished his sentence, he and the others started laughing. They all thought it was a joke. Dream of Mandarin Ducks and Butterflies. Is it better than White Fox? Do you know how to sing it? Zi asked curiously. Just as she asked, the woman on the other side of the river finished her song. The melody of the zither changed. After the first song, another style of song was sung. Yesterday was like the flowing water in the east, far away from me. Today, my heart is in chaos, so much worry. Maybe it was because the song was really good. There were many fireflies flying around her in the silent night. They danced around her, adding to the beauty of the song. Jingzhuo smiled and said, "Miss Ce, didn't you want to listen to Dream of Mandarin Ducks and Butterflies? Here it is." Zi heard him and opened her red lips slightly. Her eyes looked at the other side of the river. She was completely immersed in the melancholy melody and forgot to reply. The Enchantress of 100 Charms had extraordinary attainments in music. She played the rhythm of the song in a captivating manner. The listeners on the other side of the river were listening to her singing quietly. Yu Qianqiu's eyes kept darting around. He didn't know what she was trying to do by doing this. Suddenly, his eyes met with the Enchantress of 100 Charms, and a trace of slyness flashed across the latter's eyes. Yu Qianqiu felt that something was wrong. She might be targeting him, but he did not know what she was trying to do. When the song ended, the crowd heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, the melody changed again. Although it was not as familiar as the previous two songs, the helpless feelings that came from the other side of the river were enough to stir people's hearts. Under the moonlight, the red lips moved and sang, "Don't talk about the past. Life is full of ups and downs. Even if you can't erase your memories, love and hate are still in your heart. If you really want to cut off the past and let tomorrow continue, you don't have to pester me anymore." The Enchantress of 100 Charms sang this song with great emotion. It was the first time the crowd heard it and they were amazed. Yu Qianqiu unconsciously crossed his arms in front of his chest. He squinted his eyes and mumbled in his heart, "What is she doing? Is she trying to hold a concert?" He turned his head to look at Yan Zixia. Seeing her infatuated face, Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth but he was speechless. He only felt goosebumps all over his body. Ziyi's eyes widened. She subconsciously pulled by Zizong and asked, "What's the name of this song?" "Ah." Bai Zizong came back to his senses. He shook his head and said, "It sounds good, but I've never heard it before. I don't know what it's called. Maybe I'm ignorant. Do you guys know?" He asked Wu Liqing and the other two. The three of them thought hard and shook their heads, indicating that they didn't know. Zi was a little disappointed. She wanted to ask the other side of the river, but she was afraid that she would disturb the other party's performance. She could only listen to the other side of the river quietly until the song ended. After the song ended, the Enchantress of 100 Charms pressed her hands on the strings to stop the lingering sound. She stood on the huge rock with the guqin in her arms. Under the moonlight, even the red veil could not hide her graceful figure. One of her hands gently pulled down the veil that covered half of her face. Her charming face was finally revealed in front of everyone. Those who knew her exclaimed, "The Enchantress of Enchanted Palace. So it's her. I was wondering why she looked so familiar. After the Enchantress of Enchanted Palace was wiped out, didn't she go into hiding? Why is she here to play the guqin?" The crowd whispered to each other in surprise. The Enchantress of 100 Charms looked around and giggled. "I've been hiding for so many years. I didn't expect so many people to recognize me. How rare." Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. She had revealed her identity again. It seemed that she wanted to come out openly. At this moment, a burst of laughter came from behind him. I was wondering who was in the mood. So it's Palace Master Yi. Yu Qianqiu turned around and saw a group of people standing behind him. They were probably attracted by the sound of the guqin. Dongfang Chang Ao and Qiu Weiyuan stood side by side. The one who laughed was Qiu Weiyuan. He flashed over the crowd and landed in front of the huge rock across the river. So it's the leader of 10,000 demons, Elder Qiu. The Enchantress of 100 Charms glanced at him. Her expression was indifferent and a little rude. The enchantment palace was destroyed, but the leader of 10,000 demons did not help. She was a little unhappy. Qiu Weiyuan smiled awkwardly. "Palace Master Yi, I haven't seen you for many years. I didn't expect you to be as powerful as ever. The war of the cultivation world has just begun and we need a master like you to join us." Yu Qianqiu nodded secretly. It was the first time he heard that the Enchantress of 100 Charms' surname was Yi. The enchantment palace is gone. What does the war of the cultivation world have to do with me? I don't want to participate in the war. I'm only here to visit a friend. The Enchantress of 100 Charms bluntly refused and turned to look at Yu Qianqiu. She resumed her charming smile and said, "I have lived in seclusion for many years and am fond of music. By chance, I ran into the composer of the White Fox and the Mandarin Duck and Butterfly Dream, so I asked him for a song. Just now, I played and sang Love Has Become a Thing of the Past. Recently, I suddenly heard that Sir appeared in 100 Flowers Valley again, so I came to pay a visit, hoping to learn another song." Everyone followed her gaze. It was none other than Yu Qianqiu, whose expression was twitching. They were in an uproar. Could it be that he really composed those songs? Zi, Bai Zizong, and the others turned around. They were still in disbelief when they saw it was Yu Qianqiu. Yan Zixia believed it without a doubt because she had seen it with her own eyes. She asked in a low voice, "The song just now was called Love Is Past. Damn it. What was this woman trying to do?" Yu Qianqiu looked around and smiled at the Enchantress of 100 Charms. "Palace Master Yi, you're being too polite. It's just a joke. It's not worth asking for advice. I've come all the way here. Are you going to let me go home disappointed?" The Enchantress of 100 Charms laughed. Although it was a joke, Yu Qianqiu felt that there was a hint of threat in it, which made him very unhappy. He looked at Yan Zixia beside him and thought to himself, "Forget it. I'll just take it as fulfilling my promise to her." He threw out a green flying sword and flew to the Enchantress of 100 Charms. He glared at her. The Enchantress of 100 Charms did not mind. She smiled charmingly and pushed the zither in her hand to him. She then gave way to him and floated to the bottom of the giant rock. Yu Qianqiu held the zither with one hand and looked at Yan Zixia. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Back then, I promised someone that I would compose a song for her. Unfortunately, I've never fulfilled my promise. I'm ashamed that she asked me about it today. I'll just borrow your zither to fulfill my promise." He sat down with his legs crossed. He closed his eyes and pondered for a while. He randomly picked a song from his memory and brewed it. When he opened his eyes, his fingers were already playing the zither skillfully. The clear and refreshing sound of the zither weaved out a beautiful melody, and the people on the other side of the river were immediately stunned. Qiu Weiyuan stared at the fingers that were playing the zither. He realized that it was not an act. His mouth turned into a circle. Bai Zizong and the other three looked at each other. They said that it was impossible just now, but it became a reality in the blink of an eye. Zi's mouth was opened so wide that an egg could be stuffed in it. It was unbelievable. Chapter 406. The temptress turned to the other side of the river, trying to find the person Yu Qianqiu promised, but it was hard to confirm. Others might not understand, but Yan Zixia did. The person Yu Qianqiu was talking about was her. Her beautiful eyes were slightly watery, but fortunately, it was hard for others to see it due to the dim moonlight. The melody was clear, and under the moonlight, it gave off a free and easy feeling. Yu Qianqiu looked around with a calm smile on his face, and echoed the melody. The world of mortals is funny, infatuation is the most boring, arrogance is good. This life is not over, but the heart has no worries. I just want to be free for the rest of my life. Smile to people when awake, forget everything in dreams, sigh that the sky darkens too early. The next life is unpredictable, love and hate are written off, I sing to wine, I only want to be happy until I grow old. The surprise on everyone's faces had turned into an attentive expression. The troubles in their hearts seemed to have dissipated along with the song. They were all immersed in it, and some even swayed left and right involuntarily with the melody. Was this the guy who was filthy and immoral? This guy actually had this side to him. Qiu Weiyuan, who was below, was petrified on the spot with a blank face. Zi, who was on the other side, was completely dumbfounded. Elder Bai's disciple was indeed not an ordinary person. The world of mortals is funny, infatuation is the most boring. Are you talking to me, comforting me? So you have always known my heart. Yan Zixia mumbled as if she was dreaming. The moonlight was dim, the river was flowing, the fireflies were dancing, and the breeze was cool. As he sang and sang, Yu Qianqiu also entered the state of mind. His expression was transcendent, and there was a faint smile on his face as he looked at the fireflies resting on his shoulder. They were singing to their heart's content under the moonlight. He said, no matter how cold the wind is, I don't want to escape. No matter how beautiful the flowers are, I don't want them. The higher the sky, the narrower the heart. No matter how much karma there is, I get drunk alone. I cry today, I laugh tomorrow, I don't expect anyone to understand, I'm full of pride. The song is singing, the dance is dancing, the night is long, and the dawn is looking for happiness. After repeating the catchy melody a few times, everyone had already memorized it. Many people were humming it softly, realizing that this song could relieve their worries. Music will eventually come to an end, and beauty cannot be preserved forever. The music slowly came to an end. Everyone was still immersed in the joy. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. It seemed that the performance was quite effective. Suddenly, he discovered that the enchantress of 100 charms was looking at him with a smile, full of ill intentions. He could not help but frown. Without saying a word, he picked up the zither on his knee and tossed it back to the other party. The enchantress of allure caught the zither that was rolling over and gently held it in her arms. Her face was filled with an enchanting smile as she let out a burst of bell-like giggles. She seemed to be very proud, which woke everyone up with a start. When everyone looked at Yu Qianqiu again, their gazes were filled with deep veneration. To be able to improvise such a beautiful and classic song, how many people in the world could do it? He was simply a heaven-sent genius. Qiu Weiyuan smacked his lips and swallowed his saliva. He did not understand music, but he could intuitively tell that it was beautiful. Even a boorish person like him wanted to let go of everything and have a good time after listening to it. It was obvious that this song was extraordinary. TSK TSK. Looking at Yu Qianqiu, he shook his head and exclaimed. This guy was not only good at acting shamelessly and fighting, but he could also play such a gentle song. It was really surprising. What a talent. What a gentle scum. Yu Qianqiu stood up and was about to leave when the Enchantress of 100 Charms asked with a smile, Mister, are you going to leave like this? A good song needs a good name. Since Mister has left the song, you should at least tell us the name of the song. Everyone looked at Yu Qianqiu and nodded slightly. This thing was not a treasure. It was not like he could eat it if he kept it in his mouth. Without hesitation, Yu Qianqiu said, let's call it a Shao Hongqin. Shao Hongqin. That Shao Hongqin from Hongqin is so funny. Good name. The Enchantress of 100 Charms' eyes lit up and nodded in praise. Everyone else also whispered to each other. Yu Qianqiu took out a green flying sword from his long sleeve and stepped on it. The Enchantress of 100 Charms carried her zither and followed behind him. Yu Qianqiu looked back and immediately stopped in the air. The Enchantress of 100 Charms also stopped with a smile. Palace Lord Yi, why are you following me? Yu Qianqiu was surprised. The Enchantress of 100 Charms plucked the zither in her arms with a few fingers. After a few tinkles, she smiled and said, of course, to go back with Mister and continue to learn from you. Ah. It's too late. It's not convenient. Let's talk about it another day. Yu Qianqiu looked at the people below and said with a twitching face. The Enchantress of 100 Charms giggled and said, late? It's better if it's late. No one will disturb us in the dead of night. It's a good time to learn from you. Yu Qianqiu's body swayed and he almost fell off the sword. He looked at her translucent clothes and thought, Masteress, you're playing with me. There are so many people below, and you dare to say such obscure words. What will others think if you go back with me dressed like this? Everyone below looked at each other in dismay. The Enchantress of 100 Charms was famous for her charm. Although no one had seen her affairs with their own eyes, her dissolute reputation had long been widely known in the cultivation world. Now, this scum was suitable for a slut, everyone thought so. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu didn't know what the people below were thinking. Otherwise, he would have to summon the special forces and start a massacre. Brat, you destroyed my pavilion. I haven't settled the score with you yet, and you refuse to show me. The Enchantress of 100 Charms was smiling on the surface, but she was secretly threatening him with telepathy. Yu Qianqiu's face froze. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything. His cultivation was not high enough, so he couldn't explain with telepathy. The two of them were in a stalemate in the air for a while. In the end, Yu Qianqiu gave way and flew into the 100 Flowers Valley dejectedly. The Enchantress of 100 Charms giggled and followed him. The next life is unpredictable. Love and hate are written off. Is this what you want to tell me? Yan Zixia, who was below, turned around in a daze and was still murmuring. Once this woman started to let her imagination run wild, anything could fit the situation. Even 10 bulls couldn't pull her back. No, 10,000 bulls couldn't pull her back. After watching the show, the crowd left happily. They couldn't help but sigh. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to have such a trick up his sleeve. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Miss C.E. Wu Liqing passed her another incense stick and said, there are still many fireworks left. Let's continue. Yes, 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 let's continue. Bai Zizong and the other two agreed. They immediately took out fireworks from their storage pouches and started to place them on the ground. Ze took the incense stick and lit a fuse. She watched as a ray of light shot into the sky and exploded. Although the colors were still beautiful, she didn't have the mood to start. Her lips were slightly pouting, showing a lack of interest. She looked at the 4 men who were placing the fireworks. She couldn't help but compare them with Yu Qianqiu. Then she frowned and thought, as expected of the disciples of the aristocratic families. They only know how to play all day and follow behind women. What a loser. It seems that when I was with him, I was always behind him. He was busy all day, and I rarely saw him stop. I was fine with him. Why would I hang out with these vulgar people and play with children's things? So vulgar. Damn it. I've been with him for so long. He never told me that he knows how to play the guqin and compose music. Liar. Ziyi's pretty face turned cold. She threw the incense stick on the ground and turned to leave. Ah! Miss Ziyi, where are you going? There are many fireworks here. Bai Zizong shouted. The other 3 were stunned. You guys play. I'm going back. Ziyi said without turning her head. We'll go with you. The 4 of them said in unison. Ziyi's face darkened. She turned around and shouted, Don't follow me. Then she left quickly. The 4 of them watched her figure disappear under the moonlight. When they came back to their senses, they couldn't help but look at each other. They didn't know why Ziyi suddenly lost her temper. They didn't know what Ziyi was thinking. If they knew, they would definitely shout that they were innocent. It's not that you wanted to play. Who would play with a cultivator? We're playing with you, but you're saying that we're vulgar. What happened? Did someone make her angry? Tan Fei was shocked. Wu Liqing shook his head. Who dared to make her angry? Maybe she's tired of playing with them. Sigh. A woman's heart is so hard to understand. Beautiful women are even more so. Looks like we need to find something new. Bai Zizong nodded in agreement. Jingzhuo pointed at the fireworks on the ground. What about these? I still have a lot in my storage bag. It's not a good thing to keep these things in my storage bag. They could turn into explosives if something goes wrong. What else can we do? She asked us to play, so we'll play. Who knows what she's thinking? This woman is like a kid. Maybe she'll come back when she's interested. Wu Liqing squatted on the ground and lit up a bunch. Whoosh. Bang. The fireworks rose into the sky. The other 3 looked at each other and lit some incense as well. The 4 of them played until midnight. When they thought that Ziyi wouldn't come back, they were so angry that they poured the rest of the fireworks in their storage bags into the river. On the other side, Yu Qianqiu and 100 Charms Beauty had just arrived at 100 Flowers' house. When they heard the fireworks exploding again, they only looked back. After entering, Yu Qianqiu knocked on the counter and said, Shopkeeper, prepare another empty room for me. Just as the shopkeeper nodded, 100 Charms Beauty smiled and said, There's no need. Yu Qianqiu turned around happily and said, Palace Master Yi, do you have something to do and have to leave? Do you want me to send you off? He was really afraid of her. It would be great if he could send her off. Who knew that as soon as he finished speaking, the 100 Charm Enchantress would secretly stretch out a sharp index finger and directly poke his waist, causing him to grimace in pain. What? Do you want to chase me away? 100 Charms Beauty smiled and said. No, you misunderstood. Yu Qianqiu clenched his teeth and said. 100 Charms Beauty looked up and nodded. That's good. I have something to talk to you about. Bring me to your room. That's not very convenient. Hiss. Just as Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth, he felt another sharp pain on his waist. He didn't dare to say anything else and quickly went upstairs. 100 Charms Beauty nodded and smiled at the shopkeeper. Then, she followed Yu Qianqiu. The shopkeeper felt his bones become lighter. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.